So, what are we looking at today? I'm sure many of you have had all sorts of fun and games with the Register of Overseas Entities in the past 10 months or so. So, what we're going to look at today is how we got here. Why did we end up with this new register that we have to grapple with? How things are going. There's still lots of unknowns with this legislation. There's still lots of gaps that need plugging. We're still waiting for those. We're going to look at the underlying legislation that underpins all this, what transactions are caught by the law, the various milestones that we had, which were last August, last September, and then 31st January this year. The things you need to think about where you're dealing with land registry and you've got an overseas entity, whether it's your client or on the other side, how we get an OEID, who has to have one, what is a beneficial owner, because that's what has to be disclosed on the register. We'll look at that in more detail in a minute. And basically, we're looking for things you need to think about, watch out for, what happens if overseas entities don't comply with the new law, and that's all quite onerous. And also looking ahead to further changes and updates there might be. There's a lot of gaps that still remain to be filled in, but it is certainly far more settled than it was when we were looking at this back in, say, August 2022, when frankly, there were so many holes, it was like a Swiss cheese, and we didn't know what was going on really. So what is a beneficial owner? Well, it could be an individual, it can be another company, it could be a government, it could be a public authority. So for example, registrable beneficial owners in relation to an overseas entity could be private individual. If they're a beneficial owner, we'll look at that in a minute. What is a beneficial owner of the OE and they're not exempt from being registered? Or a legal entity other than a government or public authority if they are a beneficial owner, or subject to their own disclosure requirements. In other words, they're on some other register, which we'll look at in a minute, and they're not exempt. So the overseas entity might be owned by a UK company, say, or a company that's listed on the German stock exchange. Those are all subject to their own disclosure requirements. It could be a government or public authority that's the beneficial owner. And there are very, very limited get outs from providing personal information, even for people like celebrities, because sometimes celebrities, pop stars, and so on will buy a property through some kind of shell company registered abroad because they don't want it publicly visible that whichever pop star owns that nice house in Belgravia. But they're all caught by the Register of Overseas Entities rules, and there's very, very few exemptions from providing personal information. So the verification agent may have to get a copy of, some extremely famous person's passport